It's Monday, October 5th. You've got Goose, and you're entering into the core, brought to you by a new partnership between Zelle Flux and Kadena. Kadena is the world's first and fastest hybrid blockchain platform, and Zelle Flux is our decentralized computational network built from the ground up by the Zelle team and supported by the Zelle community. Zelle Flux is a series, a network, if you will, of server and enterprise-grade equipment that is made available to run applications. And we're here to support blockchain especially, so developers in the space who want to run their applications, their dApps, their explorers, their nodes, we can do all that with Flux. And that's exactly what we're doing with Kadena, because one of the needs that they wanted to address was to have more Kadena nodes on the network. And we said, well, we have Flux, we can make that happen. And so we formed this partnership so that we could go ahead and launch a bunch of Kadena nodes. And as of the making of this video, I'm pleased to say we have over 100 Kadena nodes already running. That's great for their network, and it for us is more than just a proof of concept. What this shows is that Flux is ready. So these are exciting times, and to get into that excitement, here I am, the Goose, rising from the ashes like a bald phoenix. I'm in for Daniel Keller, and I'm so excited to share with you an interview I had with one of the team members of Kadena. So let's go ahead and get right into this, guys. Enjoy the show. Okay, Doug Beardsley is the Director of Engineering for Kadena. So welcome, Doug, to the core.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Good to have you here. So I got a bunch of things that I want to ask you just like right off the bat. But before we even get into that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the Kadena blockchain.
Sure. I've been doing software for just about as long as I can remember. Got introduced to computers when I was a kid and instantly knew that I wanted to be a programmer. Been programming ever since, pretty much. So I've got more than 15 years in industry, worked in a few different industries, started out in the defense world, spent a few years there, learned a ton of stuff, did some security work, moved to New York City, got into functional programming, worked in some finance, and then more just kind of traditional web dev, full stack, front end, back end stuff. And now here I am doing blockchain for the past few years. I knew some of the Kadena people from previous stuff I've done in the functional programming world, in the Haskell community specifically. And when I found out that there was an opening with them, was really excited to join. And we've been having a blast for the past few years building out the Kadena blockchain.
Fantastic. So, I mean, Kadena has members who used to be with JP Morgan and helped work on their first blockchain, Juno, right? Did you have any part in that?
I did not. I was not at JP, but I knew them when they were at JP, and they left, went out on their own, and were kind of getting things ramped up for a while. And then I ended up being free and looking, and got in touch with them, and timing worked out. And so yeah, they bring a lot of really great experience, both from the finance side of things and from the blockchain side of things, since they were really doing a lot of blockchain work for JP, and that's been super valuable for us because one of the co-founders went off and wrote an EVM interpreter over a weekend, and we've got a whole lot of deep technological experience that we're drawing on, and it shows.
Oh, clearly, and I can't wait to get into some of the nitty gritty of that. But before we go there, it's really a very exciting time for hopefully both of us. I know it is for us with the Zelle project. We just launched version 1. Now we're on version 1.1 already of Flux, which is our decentralized computational network, and we're really happy to announce that the two projects, Kadena and Zelle, have partnered so that we could bring Kadena Nodes online through Flux. So before we get to the node part, I just have to ask. clearly in the blockchain space, we know that every project has a particular focus or some maybe problem they're trying to solve. What would you say that Kadena's like key issue is with what are you trying to solve with this blockchain?
We're trying to make blockchains scalable and able to realize their full potential in terms of global financial infrastructure. The existing blockchains, let's just say Bitcoin, Ethereum, the two big players, they're great. They broke new ground, both of them, and showed that we have a whole world of possibilities, but they just do not support enough volume. I think most people in the industry are aware, we call it the scalability problem. They just can't process enough transactions. So no matter how good it gets and no matter how many people want to use it, eventually not everyone will be, just because the systems don't support enough transactions. And we have actually solved the scalability problem for real. And we're not just saying that we solved the scalability problem, because in August, we actually scaled our blockchain in production from 10 chains to 20 chains, essentially doubling our computation capacity, our block throughput. And we did this on the fly in production and proved that we actually can scale this system. And so we think we've demonstrated that we have a really great foundation to build on. And we don't want blockchains to be limited by this lack of scale. And we think that Chainweb can do that.
And Chainweb is what you call the concurrent.
So yeah, I guess I'm being a little bit fast and loose with the terms. We call it the Kadena blockchain, and Chainweb is the protocol. And the reason I use the term Chainweb is because it kind of describes how we made the scaling happen. It's multiple chains, and they're braided together in like a web, and that allows us to have the security of all of the chains, but we're generating blocks on every chain at the same rate. And so we can have much higher block production rate, and therefore more transactions per second as we scale up the number of chains.
Does each chain have the same information on it? Like
No.
copies of, or okay, so the information
No.
like in one block could be on just one particular chain, not all of them.
That's correct. These are separate chains. You should think of them as completely separate, self-contained chains.
Cool.
And they're connected together, they're braided together, so that if miners from half of the chains all jumped to one chain, they wouldn't be able to attack that chain, because you have to have the hash power of the whole network to attack any single chain. So
okay.
that's like if you had 10 Bitcoins, that would be one of the problems. A 51% attack is not a 51% attack. It's now a 5.1% attack. And that's a major security loss. And Chainweb, because the chains are braided together, does not have that problem. And then the other problem with 10 Bitcoins is you have 10 different currencies. And that's no good. You want one currency. And we've solved that problem as well by being able to do cross-chain transfers. So you can transfer coins from one chain to another, which means that the currency is actually a single unified currency across all 10 chains. So the blockchains are completely independent, with the exception of the hash links that braid them together. And they're different data, different everything, but you can do these cross-chain transfers, which unifies the currency that is using to as the underpinnings of the whole system.
Unlike other chains, which can they only have one chain. So I mean, just to pick on, say, Bitcoin here, it's a good example. It's the first one, the OG. But there's only one Bitcoin chain, and
right.
So you have a limitation there with the number of transactions that can be processed per second, right?
Yep.
And I think the max is somewhere around 7 per second, something like that.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So what kind of transaction throughput are we talking with Kadena?
So we just recently put out a test that says 480,000 transactions per second. Now that is that's a big number, and it's a little bit that we're trying to talk in the same ballpark that a number of other projects are talking, where they bring in private blockchains that are fast finality. And so by putting a private blockchain that can do, and we have a private blockchain called Kuro that we've had for quite some time, and it can do something like 8,000 transactions per second. That was built with a whole bunch of the experience from what the founders learned at JP Morgan, and they built a very fast, scalable, efficient private blockchain. And if you put some of these private blockchains and attach them kind of on every chain of the Kadena public blockchain, you can actually get a very large transaction throughput. You could kind of think of that as maybe being a side chain, like a Lightning network, but you can have separate Lightning networks on every separate chain that's running on the Kadena public blockchain. So that's kind of bringing in what we call the hybrid blockchain, which is making both the public blockchain and the private blockchain play together and complement each other in different ways depending on what you need, what your needs are. If you need really fast transaction confirmation and high throughput, the private blockchain is really suitable, and then you can make that be like a layer 2 and sync things back to the layer 1 chain as needed to get high throughput. Anyway, that's kind of the bigger picture of what we can do with the hybrid blockchain. But if you just focus on Chainweb, we switched from 10 chains to 20 chains. So roughly speaking, we can do 10 to 20 times more transactions than Bitcoin and Ethereum. At the end of the day, the limits here are two things. They're how fast can you produce blocks? Mm-hmm. And there's a limit to how fast you can produce blocks, because the blocks have to be communicated to all the nodes in the network. They would basically transmit it all around the world. The speed of light limits you there. And so there's only so low you can bring your block times. And then there's a limit to how many transactions you can put in each block, because these are smart contract transactions. There has to be a decent amount of processing that goes on for every single transaction. And that there's unavoidably going to be a limit of how many of those either you can fit in the block in terms of bytes, in terms of size, or in terms of computing power, how long it takes the block to process. If you put millions and millions of transactions into a single block, it's going to take you a long time to process that block, and then you're gonna be slowing down the block production. So you can only produce blocks so fast, and you can only put so many transactions in them. And that's unavoidable. No matter Chainweb can't get around that. Bitcoin, Ethereum, that's just the reality of the physics and the way these systems work. And so the way Chainweb works is to parallelize the problem, like a classic computer science approach to solving this. Well, if we can only if we're limited on one chain, well, we can add more than one chain, and we can add as many chains as we want. And we've done studies, and we can feasibly go into the tens or hundreds of thousands of chains. And if every chain can process even just 5 transactions a second, if you can go to tens or hundreds of thousands of chains, you can process a whole lot of transaction volume.
That's really fascinating when you say that many chains, because it's almost as if to say, like, I mean, conceivably, if you wanted to dream big, every company could have even multiples, maybe multiple chains for different purposes, different reasons.
You know? Absolutely.
So that's very interesting. And does having different chains then give you a little boost in speed? I know you were talking about that layer 2 private chain option, but if you were to use a chain, let's say, that just doesn't have all that much traffic, do you have a boost in speed for that, or is it always the same?
Well, so it still works the same as Bitcoin and Ethereum, where there's blocks every X amount of time. Our block time is 30 seconds. So you're not going to speed that up. But what you can do is start getting creative with how you design your application and how it is deployed across the network. So one example that we've done with this was back in, I think, maybe April, after coronavirus, really started hitting the world, we went and built a little coronavirus like test tracking dApp. And in this world, you really don't need the test results to be put on a specific chain. You just need them on a chain. And so we were able to build a dApp that you put in test results and it would just send them to whichever chain it happened to be coming up next. And it would just round robin load balance them around all of the chains. And we were able to get a really high throughput of submitting coronavirus, test coronavirus results onto our blockchain by batching them. We can put say 50. I'm just making numbers up, but let's say 50 test results in one block on one chain. Well, put 50 here, put 50 on the next chain, 50 on the next chain, and until you've used up all the chains, come back. And we were able to, I don't even remember what the results were. 50 might be too low, but we were able to get, I think, several thousand test results per second into our system because we were able to load balance across
That's
chains.
massive. So was that like by country, by state? Did you do it
It wasn't organized in any particular way. And the reason was because in this particular application, how is it going to be used? Well, you're submitting all of these test results into this blockchain, which provides this definitive record, this tamper-proof record of test results. And say they're signed by the doctor that administered the test or something like that, right?
Okay.
And then how is it going to be used? Well, right. So someone is going to come into a place and you're going to want to test them. You're going to want to see what their test results are. They're going to like flash their wristband, or they'll sign something with their hardware wallet key, or their Face ID on their phone or something to say, hey, this is me. And then you're going to look that person up, or that ID, on the blockchain to see what test results have been submitted for that ID. And what you'll do is you'll look that up on all of the chains, because you don't know what chain they got submitted to, because the application was designed to submit to all the chains. But that's not going to be a really expensive thing for you. You're just going to make a query to each chain for that particular ID. And this isn't going to take you a lot of time. If there's 20 chains or 100 chains, it's just 20 or 100 queries. And then whichever chain you submitted to, or maybe that person has had multiple results put onto different chains over time, and you'll get them all. And you'll get them in a very short amount of time, and you'll be able to provide a quick, easy to read results of like, here's all of the test results we've seen for this person. Mm-hmm. And this is just a fantastic application that can really leverage the scale of Chainweb, because it doesn't matter which chain you're on. Now, not all applications work like this. Some do need to be on a particular chain for any number of reasons. And in those cases, okay, well, you're going to have to wait for your transaction to get into that particular chain. But like anything in computer science, computers have all kinds of different levels of stuff going on inside them, and at the end of the day, they kind of get covered up. And then the user just sees, oh, I'm just asking for this thing out of memory. And it could have come from any one of 5 or 10 different places. Sure. And the computer just figures that out for you. And so we're pretty sure that the way this will evolve is people will figure out strategies for covering up the multiple chain aspect of things from the users and achieving the performance and scalability that they need and makes sense for their application.
Well, I would imagine a lot of this is done through APIs, right? So you could kind of make a UI that would filter out exactly what person would need to see, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that could be great for, those people who love to build, Jamstack and all that.
For sure. Like if you If you automate the checking, the wallet application, it has your key and it looks for all of your balances across all the chains and just tells you, here's your balance. You don't have to worry about which one it's on.
See,
And you need to
that's
send some coins to someone, the wallet figures it out. Now we don't have that today, but I can easily imagine those types of applications being built.
yeah, and it's important to note that at this stage, this is greasing the rails, laying the infrastructure, and building the network, and
Exactly.
that's really at the heart of our partnership between Kadena and Flux. Is looking at this extension of the chain network, which is the Kadena Node. So maybe you
Mhm.
could tell us a little bit about what a Kadena Node is and what it does.
Absolutely. So Kadena Node is just like an Ethereum node or a Bitcoin node. What does it do? It keeps track of all of the data that is in the blockchain, and it gets new blocks from all around the world. And then whenever it sees a block, it passes it on to other computers that it's connected to that are participating in the peer-to-peer network, other nodes. So nodes are connected peer to peer and they're just gossiping. Hey, I just saw this block. I just saw this block. I just saw this block. And then every node, when they get a block, they do a bunch of checks to make sure all of the things inside that block are correct. Make sure no one tried to transfer more money than was in their account, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It executes all of the transactions, makes sure they're all correct, verifies to make sure, oh, the results that I got from executing this block are the exact same as the results that you got for executing this block. So everybody is constantly exchanging information and checking that information so that we're establishing a consensus, which is where the word consensus comes from, of what the current state of the world is. In this state of the world, Doug has 5 coins, and Goose has 10 coins, and then the next time we see a transaction, all of those books are updated.
In this
So
version
that's
of
what the
Top
note.
Gun, Goose doesn't die. But
Absolutely.
yeah, that's cool. So why is consensus so important in the blockchain space?
So consensus allows the network to be pretty resilient, where you don't have to talk to any particular place. You don't have to go to google.com in order to get this information. You can go to any node in the network that is participating, and that node will have the same copy of the information as all of the other nodes. So it gives a whole bunch of things. It makes it decentralized, so no single entity is in control of this thing. It makes it more resilient and robust. If one node goes down, all the other nodes still have copies of the data. Um, you can run a node, and now you have all of the information in the blockchain. And there may be all kinds of different reasons you might want to do that. Maybe you want your wallet to not, when your wallet does balance checks, for instance, maybe your wallet has like 5 different accounts that you've used at different times, and your wallet is going to check the balances of all of those 5 accounts. But if you send those requests off to another server, you're essentially giving away information about, oh, this person owns all of these 5 separate accounts. They were 5 random separate accounts, but they all came from the same person, and the same computer asked for them at the same time. So you're kind of like giving away some of the information about where your coins are stored. And then someone like if you connected your wallet to my node, maybe I'm logging that information. And I can see,
Mm.
oh man, this IP address over here, they've got a whole bunch of coins because they asked for information on all of these accounts. And I can maybe surmise that a good number of those accounts might be theirs. So you're like betraying a little bit of knowledge about the kinds of things you're interested in when you connect your wallet to a node. So maybe you want to run your own node so that you can connect your wallet to your node, and now no one else is finding out information about which accounts that you're interested in. That's just one example of why you might want to run a node.
So what's the when it comes to Kadena nodes, then what's the connection to Zelle Flux?
So We have our mainnet. It's been running for almost a year now. We launched October 30, I think, last year. And we have a number of nodes. Kadena is running a number of nodes. Other people are running nodes. If you're an exchange, you probably don't want to rely on other nodes. If you're a wallet provider, you may not want to rely on other nodes. There's all kinds of reasons why you might want to run your own node. If you just want to have the data that's in the blockchain and play around with it yourself, you also might want to run a node. So we have some number of nodes. We would like there to be more nodes. And Zelle Flux seemed like a really interesting way for us to explore that. We have been grappling with the idea of how do we incentivize people to run their own nodes. And we don't have, I've described a few different answers or different reasons why people might want to run their own nodes. But beyond that, we don't have a really good mechanism for incentivizing this. And like you need to, if you're going to pay people to run a node, which maybe we're willing to do in some situations, you still have, there's a whole bunch of details you have to go through of how do we make this, how do we check and prove that the person is actually running the node. If we want the node to be available for different people to query, then how do we know that they're not just like they figured out that we're checking them every 5 minutes and they accept ours and then they like reject everyone else. All these details are kind of tricky, and Zelle Flux seems like it has attacked a lot of these problems for us. So we don't have to worry about a lot of the verification of uptime and things like that. And it just seemed like it was a really interesting thing for us to explore of, hey, let's see if the Zelle Flux network can run Kadena Nodes, which it turns out it was pretty easy. We already had our nodes Dockerized, and you guys were able to take them, it seemed like, very quickly, and get them up and running on the Zelle Flux network. And from my perspective as director of engineering, hey, now there's a whole lot more nodes out there. This is cool. And it gives us a potential way to incentivize these things. So that was what we were really attracted with. And of course, we had already worked with Zelle for our wallet integration in Zelle Core, and enjoyed working with you guys there. And this seemed like it was something that kind of hit an area that we had been thinking about, but we didn't really have a good answer for. And so that's why we were interested in exploring it.
Awesome. Well, I tell you what, it's been really exciting for us, and I'm a node operator myself, a Zelle node operator, and part of my own background is on YouTube has been taking people through the ins and outs of how to set up a master node. When the big master node craze, like 2.5 years ago or whatever, I was doing videos left and right just because people were like, how do I, and it seemed like Zelle node is the Mac daddy of all nodes because you have the 3 tiers, and then you had to take into account certain requirements for those tiers, like what type of equipment you'd need to either rent or build. And not only that, they would have to pass very stringent benchmarks. So there was all of this sort of checks and balances that was hard coded in to a service that runs on every node called Zelle Bench, which just constantly checks CPU, checks the amount of RAM that's available, amount of hard drive. I can't say hard drive unless, of course, you're running some kind of like RAID 10 or something, because you need to have SSD speeds. You can't just get away with, right? It's got to be like really top notch, enterprise grade. That was the focus. It's an enterprise grade Ubuntu server, for lack of anything else. But I'll go ahead and throw this in there because I know Dan would want me to. I'll give you my best, Dan. Dan Keller is, if you can Dockerize it, you can put it on Flux. And that's the kind of thing he would say, because you guys already had the Docker. So if the image is already ready, all we need to do is import the image and assign it a port. Pretty simple.
Right. And all of those things that you just mentioned of verifying various performance metrics, yeah, you need that. If you're going to compensate people for running services, you need to know how much horsepower they're giving you. And those were the kinds of problems that we didn't want to get distracted with trying to figure out solutions for.
Well, I think it's another area of commonality between us because what was it? Early this year, maybe it was sometime last year. Blockchain as a service. You launched your blockchains as a service, and that's kind of like the idea of Flux. Is it runs on Zelle's blockchain, but it offers all these additional services, which is the computational network. So
Right.
that really works well in terms of ethos and outlook. So how would you rate your experience of working with the Zelle team?
Oh man, you guys were super easy. Like I mentioned recently, we have just an amazing team at Kadena, and I've gotten kind of spoiled working with just phenomenal engineers. And they make my job as director of engineering super easy because I can just say, hey, well, I think our priority is to work on this thing, and then they come back and it's done, which is really amazing. And with the Flux integration, we've definitely had experiences where we interact with other teams and it's just like, progress just doesn't seem to happen. It's, a lot of hand holding going on. And that was not the case at all. We just said, hey, here's our Docker container. And then like a couple days later, you had nodes running. I was like, wow, that was easy.
Like the Staples button. Boop. We should get a Zelle button for
Exactly.
that. So I'm just real quick looking at the API, and as of this moment, we have currently on the Zelle node network 71 Kadena nodes running, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
So since we launched it yesterday, it's got 71. I know Trunk, who's our lead developer, posted in your Discord sometime early this morning. There was 59, so that number is growing, and it's growing very quickly. So it's good to
Great.
hear.
Super
So
exciting.
that's more than whatever number of nodes you had earlier. And the nice thing about Flux is it will tell you if it's actually functioning. So you can go into Flux and take a look, and it'll tell you the status of that particular node, including uptime and additional stats that those who are savvy or are curious, you could go in and actually see all that kind of stuff. So these are exciting times. I'm really pumped. So obviously we're just getting into Q4 here. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about like what's on the horizon here. I know I heard some talk about Polkadot. I heard some talk about Kadena Swap. Like, you want to talk a little bit about those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, we've been building out our infrastructure, our core like foundation of our public blockchain for a while now. In August, we transitioned from 10 to 20 chains, which was a big milestone for us. It's like now we've got a network. It's been running for a while. It's been working pretty well. And now we've proven that it can scale, like actually in real life, in production. And so we've noticed this big build and increase in interest in DeFi over the last months while we've been off building our infrastructure. And now we think that we really need to kind of shift gears a little bit and focus on getting our DeFi like foundations in place. And we're really excited. We just this past week announced kind of our two big DeFi initiatives is Kadena Swap and decentralized bridges that we're working on. And so Kadena Swap is going to be a decentralized exchange running on Kadena where you'll be able to trade whatever tokens are out there to be traded. And then the bridge effort is for like, okay, a decentralized exchange with no tokens isn't very useful. And so we need to get some tokens onto our network. And turns out that doing bridges is fairly hard. Centralized bridges aren't so hard. You just, an entity, you give this entity coins in from one blockchain, they lock them up, they mint coins on this other blockchain, and kind of call it a day. that's not too hard. There's a number of those, WBTC and USDT, USDC, all these others. But to do it in a fully decentralized manner, bit more involved.
Mm.
And we happen to have some people on our team with just the right expertise to attack this kind of a problem. And these two things go hand in hand. So on the one hand, we're going to be building a decentralized exchange, Kadena Swap, and then we're going to be building some decentralized bridge tokens that will allow you to trade other tokens from other platforms on Kadena. Tokens on Ethereum, ERC20s, tokens on, I can't remember, we had a chart with a bunch of collaborations. I think Cello was in there, Maker, I don't remember them all, and but we are really trying to put in place infrastructure where we can kind of bridge to lots of different places. We can really nail down the decentralized bridge story, and guess what? You can come and you're going to be able to trade these coins on the blockchain with low transaction fees, and you won't have to be paying 10, 20, 30, 50, 70, however much crazy gas fees we've been seeing recently with DeFi transactions on Ethereum.
Oh, it's been very high. Yeah, I've been seeing in some articles up to $99 in terms of transaction
Yeah,
fees. It's just and that's due largely in part to network congestion, right? Because
right.
the higher price you pay, the more priority you get.
You get
And
exactly.
so I don't know. It's making it a little. It's unenticing. It's
Right.
interesting that you go, okay, yeah, we have this potential to trade in a peer-to-peer way. However, at what cost? And if what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying is that if you can scale this in a way that transactions you're not going to have bottlenecks, and you're going to be able to do it in a way that's affordable. I think that more people are going to be very excited to hear about that, especially given the latest hype with Uniswap, and there's another one that XDAI is doing called Honeyswap, I think, and
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
yeah, Honeyswap. It's built on a private blockchain from POA, and
Oh, okay.
so that's something else that's out there right now. They're claiming very fast speeds, but they've basically forked Uniswap. So it's
Got
basically
it.
Uniswap on another chain.
Okay.
Sounds to me like you're doing something a lot more from the ground up, and that's very interesting
It's
to
going to
me
be
because it's
really interesting. We can certainly just kind of fork Uniswap and put it on Kadena, but we've got multiple chains, and that now we don't have to use multiple chains. We could just put Uniswap on a single chain and make it be very straightforward, uh, like relatively easy clone. But we want to think about how does this fit in with multiple chains? What are the possibilities here? And I don't think it's obvious all of the answers to that question. I think there's some really interesting possibilities. We're exploring a governance token, and if we have a governance token and we have multiple chains, now we can start to do interesting things. Like maybe Kadena Swap on chain one can actually trade the governance token of Kadena Swap on chain zero. And what does that even mean? And what does it mean for vice versa? So there's some kind of mind bending possibilities here, and I
well,
don't think we fully know where these paths are going to lead us, but it's going to be a really interesting exploration.
I like the idea of a governance coin. How do you see that functioning in a DEX model?
Oh man, now you're getting out of my depth a little bit. I do not have like a concrete plan of detail of how the governance token should function. I think off the top of my head, there's a few different parameters, like configuration parameters for the decentralized exchange itself that you might want to be changeable over time, and you may not want to trust some centralized group of people to be able to set those values, things like the fee structure, and I can imagine there might be other config parameters that you might want to tweak. A governance token seems like a pretty reasonable way to go about setting and adjusting and changing some of those configurations. And then beyond that, and when you get into the multi-chain aspect, I just don't know. And I think it's great. I love not knowing things, because there's more new worlds to discover, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how Kadena Swap plays out in a multi-chain environment, in a multi-bridge environment where we're bridging to a number of other blockchains. I think we have a natural ability to function in this multi-blockchain environment because our blockchain is itself a multi-blockchain environment with these separate chains.
It's its own multi-crypto ecosystem in that regard. But the beauty of it, like you said earlier, is that it all revolves around a single currency, KDA.
Right.
And that's the beauty of, you don't have to think about, swapping all of these different coins necessarily, because if it's one of those things where you've got the scalability taken care of, you've got the infrastructure built, you've got this network that is robust, and it's providing service now, that service can then be adopted by multiple entities, different organizations and companies that want to run their own infrastructure with KDA, so you can see them just building that out. And I also like the idea that you got the private blockchain as an option, because if somebody wanted to do something internal and they don't want the rest of the world to know what's going on here, it's this medical stuff or whatever, that's brilliant. So it gives you a really nice, complete package. If somebody were interested in jumping into blockchain, I'm thinking that they would probably want to check out something with that level of not just scalability, but options. Like you said, space. You just start to think about, it's like start thinking like Star Trek, space, the final frontier. These are the voyagers of the Enterprise Kadena,
Blockchain, the final finance frontier.
Yeah, really, yeah. Oh, maybe it's now, instead of DeFi, it's got to be Fi-Fi. This is it. The last.
Ooh.
Well, I am so thrilled that I got a chance to speak with you about these things, and I know that a lot of the stuff that we talked about, I don't have a problem going technical, and I know a lot of people enjoy to get the technical details here. So I think that we covered a lot of ground, and it's so great to have that perspective, because in this space, people are coming from all different areas to try and understand better what it is that these different projects are about. So I'm so grateful that you took the time to share that with us.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Yeah.
I always love talking about this stuff. We've been putting a lot of effort into it for the past few years, and it's fun to see things come to fruition, and really excited about the collaboration with Zelle.
Same. I was just going to say that, I share your enthusiasm, because I see, so much synergy between the two projects, the same kind of ethos, the same, goals moving forward. And I really admire that you did so much work on this tracking app, contact tracing, for the virus, because early on when we first launched Flux, the first thing that we did was launch folding at home, so that we could try and do some protein folding on there. So I mean, we're always looking to find ways that we can help the world, and that's the ultimate goal here, is to bring utility and use and helpfulness to this space. And one of our favorite phrases is, is it grandma proof? Hey, maybe our conversation was a little over grandma, but when she gets the thing in her hand, and opens up a simple app, and she can look at that and say, okay, I'm negative for this test I just took. Amen. Or
that is something that everyone can understand. And at the moment, we're pretty early in the journey to a scalable blockchain and a robust blockchain that actually can support the needs of a global financial system. So we're not quite there in terms of super highly usable for everyone, but we are getting there, and I am very confident that we can get to the point where everyone can use this system. And guess what? There won't be high gas fees when we get there.
Hey, I'm all for that. Tell you what, because I've already spent my share of gas over the years, and it's getting a little annoying. But
Yep.
for right now, that's the world we live in, and it's good to know that there are alternatives and really making progress. So once again, Doug, thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to continuing our collaboration and see what continues to happen with the next quarter on into the next year. So hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you again sometime soon and catch up and see what's going on maybe in December, January, something like that.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Awesome.